Morning, dear students. With you, Mr. Hussein, teacher of English, secondary. Now we are having drama. We are still with drama, and we are discussing Act 2. Now let's look at the questions and see if there's something new. Slide number 2. Here we have Mrs. Pierce, and by the way, Mrs. Pierce is the housewife at Professor Higgins' house. By the way, she was a respectable woman. She was a kind woman, and she often protected Eliza against Professor Higgins' aggressiveness. She always defended her. She was very kind and good lady, although she was a housewife. She acted as a front against Professor Higgins and Colonel Pickering. She was always against them. She always defended Eliza and taught her how to behave well. Now, as we said, we are with slide 2. The question is, Mrs. Pierce is admirably humane. Humane means kind, not human, humane. In dealing with Eliza, explain, give examples. Show how was she kind? How was she humane? Ms. Pierce belongs to a refined slice of the lower class. She belongs to the lower class. She's a housewife. But she belonged to a refined slice. Kind people, kind sector. So she feels some sympathetic to the girl coming from a slum, a poor area. She feels she has some duty towards the girl. As we said, she defended Eliza. She protected her. She showed her how to believe. In fact, she was a great help to Eliza. And she plays a good role in forming Eliza's new personality. Now, in slide number 3, we have question 2. To Higgins, Eliza is just a case of a scientific experiment. Of course, we know the bet, the wager, the challenge between Professor Higgins and his friend Colonel Pickering to change Eliza into a lady, into a duchess in 6 months' time. She would go and attend the party, the ambassador's garden party, through which no one could recognize her as a poor flower girl. Everyone will see her as a lady who was an elite, who belonged to the upper class. This was the bet. If he succeeded, Colonel Pickering would pay the costs of the experiment. So for him, Eliza was just a subject of a scientific experiment. So he never gave any respect to her. He never gave any regard to her being a human being. He dealt with her as she was something. He always shouted at her. He never respected her. And this made, as we said before, Miss Pierce act as a front in front of him to protect Eliza. And even sometimes Colonel Pickering himself was against the professor. He was more kind than the professor. So she was just a case of a scientific experiment. Never kept in mind that she was a human being that should be respected. Now with slide number 4, question 3, how does Dolittle convince Higgins to give him the £5? Convince means persuade. Dolittle is Eliza's father. He is a poor man. He belongs to the lower class. He wanted to take advantage of his daughters living with a rich man, Professor Higgins. So he went there to take £5. But Professor Higgins was clever enough. He could understand the man's personality. He even threatened Dolittle to take his daughter out. By the way, Dolittle never cared about his daughter. And he got threatened. But then soon, through the way and the style of his speech, Professor Higgins admired him and wanted to give him not £5, but £10. But strangely enough, Dolittle wanted only £5, of course, to be drunk, to get drunk. Now with slide number 5, we have question 4. What contradiction can be elicited in Higgins' character? Contradiction, contrast, can be elicited. Can you deduce, can you guess about Higgins' character? Here, Professor Higgins belongs to the upper class. So you expect him to be well-behaved, to be gentle, to be a gentleman, to deal with people in a respectable way, but actually we find the opposite. We see that he is not well behaved. He deals with Eliza in a horrible way, and so this is a contradiction in his character. He belongs to the upper class. He is expected to be gentle, but we find him vulgar, as if he belonged to the poor class. And this made Mrs. Pierce, the housekeeper, always defending Eliza and protecting her. So here there is a contradiction in his character. If you look at slide number 6, Dolittle introduces himself as a repugnant person, and yet as a pathetic one. This is what we said before. Although he is poor, he belonged to the lower class, he was ready to sell his daughter for £5 to leave her living with 2 young men. He never cared about that. He himself Eliza's mother was not his wife. So he is living a bad life. However, he could convince Professor Higgins to pay him, to give him the £10, as we discussed this question before. In slide number 7, we have, you can't take a girl up like that as if you were picking up a pebble on the beach. Mrs. Pierce here is against Professor Higgins and Colonel Pickering. She is defending Eliza. She says that the girl is not a pebble, is not a stone. She's a human being with feelings. So he must deal with her according to this approach. Mrs. Pierce is defending Eliza, and she tells Professor Higgins to be more merciful with Eliza. Now, slide number 8. I'm undeserving, and I mean to go on being undeserving. I like it, and that is the truth. Again, Dolittle, the same question like that of question 5. He is, Dolittle admits being of no manners. He doesn't have good manners, and this could affect or move Professor Higgins, that he admired him in the end. The last slide, slide number 9. All he came here for was to touch you, for some money, to get drunk. this was said by Eliza. Eliza was against her father. She warns Professor Higgins not to be affected by Dolittle's words, because actually all he does is drink and he is living a silly and careless and reckless life. So she tells him not to give her father any money. She was not pleased with her father. So here we had Act 2. Act 2, the setting was in Professor Higgins' house. The characters we saw here was Professor Higgins, his friend Pickering. We had Mrs. Pierce, the housekeeper. We had Dolittle here. I wish you had understood this session, and thank you very much.